So essentially what I'm going to be doing in this video is taking you through what is the bare basic equipment that you need to get started with recording in your own home. So the truth of it is that you do not need a lot of equipment to get started. You do not need to spend a lot of money. You can get away with a very basic setup. And that's what this is really all about. You know, it may be stuff that you already own, or you may just be able to, buy one extra bit of equipment and you can start. But I'm going to be taking you through the stuff that I personally use and also giving you some alternatives as well, which may be even cheaper than, what it is that I'm currently using. And I'm going to leave some links in the description below. So in the description of this video, I'll leave some links to the different equipment that I'm talking about. So, you can go and find it easily and everything like that. But apart from that, let's pretty much just dive right in and get started, and I'll take you through the different things that you're going to need. So the first most obvious thing that you're going to need is, of course, a computer of some kind. So I'm personally a Mac user. I have been for a few years now. It might be the case that you are a Windows user. So in that case, you'll essentially have to use a different type of software. So it might be something like Pro Tools. It might be FL Studio. It might be Cubase or something like that. So I'll get onto that very shortly. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter what type of computer you have. You do preferably want one that has really good processing power, and also one that has, plenty of RAM in there as well. But, it really doesn't matter. The one that I'm using right now is a MacBook Pro, and it's a 2016 model. So, it's not like brand new or anything, but it works absolutely brilliantly. I personally think that laptops are really good because you can pick them up and take them to different rooms, take them to different locations and stuff like that. But if you have a desktop computer, then that's absolutely fine. It's something that you'll just work with, and you'll stick to the space that you're in. So there's all different swings and roundabouts to this. You can, of course, generally get more processing power in a desktop computer than a laptop as well. So, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages to all of this. But essentially, just try to make sure that you have got a computer that's got a good amount of processing power so that you're not going to have any issues down the road, especially when it comes to having big projects. And, if you're going to be mixing and processing and stuff like that, then it can become an issue if your computer can't handle it. The next thing you're going to need is something called a DAW. So this is a digital audio workstation. So this is essentially the software that you're going to be recording into and essentially handling all of your music projects in. So there are absolutely loads of DAWs out there, and it can be a bit of a minefield of which one to go for. If you're a Mac user, then perhaps your choice is a bit more obvious because you do have GarageBand on every single Mac. It comes free with all of them. And also Logic as well, which is kind of like the step up from GarageBand, what is considered the professional one and everything like that. But, GarageBand is amazing, just to say. But, there's so many others as well. FL Studio is a really big one. There's also Studio One as well. There's Pro Tools, which is considered the industry standard one. I'm not the biggest Pro Tools fan personally, but sorry, if you do use Pro Tools, then absolutely stick with it. It is one of the more expensive ones, and if you are just getting started and you haven't bought your DAW yet, then I wouldn't recommend going with Pro Tools. I'd recommend one of the cheaper alternatives, which are absolutely amazing as well. But which one would I recommend? If you're on a Mac, then absolutely GarageBand or Logic Pro X, both incredible pieces of software. If you are on Windows, then I would probably recommend Studio One. I think that's an awesome software. I know a lot of people rave about FL Studio, but I've not used FL Studio before, so I can't really recommend it. But Studio One is really tip-top awesome. So absolutely go and check that one out. Once again, link in the description below. So next, you're going to need an audio interface. So this is a really essential piece of equipment because this is essentially kind of like the bridge between your computer and the recording equipment you're going to be using, like a microphone, for example. So, obviously you can't plug a microphone directly into your computer. So your interface has got inputs on it. It allows you to plug your headphones in as well. And it's just essentially like a little controller that allows you to adjust the levels of your microphones and, get everything smoothly into your recording software, essentially. Once again, absolute minefield. There are so many different types of interfaces out there, but I really want to narrow it down to perhaps 2 or 3 that I would recommend. The one that I personally use is an Audient ID14. So that the 14 stands for how many inputs and outputs it has, and Audient have like various other ones. They have the ID22, which is a bigger version of it. They have the ID4, which is an even smaller version as well, which I think has only got 1 microphone input. So you got to just kind of decide what it is that you're going to want to do. If you're going to want to record, for example, your voice and also another instrument at the same time, so perhaps an acoustic guitar, then you're probably going to need 2 mic inputs. Or if you're going to want to, if you're going to be recording a guitar amp, for example, and you're going to want to have 2 microphones up against the grill. So, for example, you might have an SM57 dynamic microphone, which I'll talk about in a sec. And you might have a condenser microphone like this, which I'll talk about in a sec as well. Then you're going to need 2 inputs. So, it's just kind of thinking like that, like what is it you're going to want to do, how much versatility you're going to want to have, and, how much, of course, are you happy to spend as well. Audient are amazing, though. They have incredible preamps, which is essentially the sockets that you plug your microphones into. They're really crystal clear. They're the same ones that they use in their big, studio grade mixing desks and everything. So, you're getting top quality stuff, really quite cheaply with Audient. A really big one as well, especially if you're just getting started, is the Focusrite 2i2. This is one of the cheapest ones you can get. Focusrite are a great company. They are world renowned in the music studio space. And if you want to, if you're just kind of like doing this as a hobby, and you just want something that's cheap and cheerful but really, really good, then absolutely go for the Focusrite 2i2. It's a really cool looking like interface as well. I love like the brushed kind of red metal on it. It's just really awesome. So yeah, you got a couple of different options there. You can go way more expensive even than these two, even than some like the high end Audient interfaces. But I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you're just getting started. That if you wanted to, you could absolutely look at a company called Apogee. I think it's pronounced Apogee. It's Apogee. I'll leave a link below again. They do like really like expensive interfaces, but also ones that are a little bit cheaper. There's the Apogee One, I think it's called. That lots of people use, but once again, it's quite limited because it doesn't have like many inputs on it and things like that. But they are really high quality though. So you kind of just got to make your own choice with that. But I would recommend Audient day and night. They are absolutely incredible. Or the Focusrite if you're just getting started with this. All right, next, one of my favourite things to talk about, microphones. So you're going to need a microphone or 2 in order to start recording. So this is the microphone, the condenser microphone that I own, and it's absolutely brilliant. This is called a Rode NT1. So Rode are really popular because they make really high quality equipment. But it's also, pretty cheap as well. There's another really popular version of this microphone. It's similar. It's called the Rode NT1A. It's a bit cheaper than this one. It's a much kind of brighter microphone. It's very commonly described as. It's a very kind of like crisp and modern sounding microphone. This one's got a bit more of like a flat. Oh, I just hit the pop filter there. This one's got a bit more of a flat frequency spectrum compared to the NT1A version of this, which I am personally more favourable of, because it means that you're getting a more kind of like, how's the best way to explain it? A more of like a realistic capture of what it is that you're putting the microphone in front of. So whether it be a voice, whether it be an acoustic guitar, you're getting kind of like, you know, as it sounds. Whereas an NT1A is going to boost things a little bit. It's going to make things sound a bit brighter, a bit more sparkly. So when it comes to actually mixing things, you know, sometimes you're not going to want to have, you know, stuff that's already been boosted, because you want to do that yourself. So that's why a microphone like this is really good with that. But, you know, it's once again swings and roundabouts. People are going to have different preferences with stuff like that. The other thing you may want to look into getting as well is some kind of dynamic microphone. So this is a condenser microphone, so they're actually powered microphones. So you're going to need something called phantom power on your interface, which is essentially 48 volts that goes into the microphone and essentially charges the capacitor, allows it to work properly. You can get what's called dynamic microphones, which are essentially unpowered microphones. They don't need the extra phantom power in order to work. Very common ones are the SM57, which is an incredible microphone for so many different things, including vocals, miking up guitar amps, you know, drums, snare drums. Like there's so many things that you can do with that microphone, and they're really quite cheap as well. There's also, you know, there's the Shure SM58, which is also a great vocal microphone. There's also a microphone called the RE20, which is another incredible dynamic microphone. It's great on things like kick drums and also on vocals as well. I know I've seen Tom York from Radiohead use that microphone a lot. And, you know, I absolutely love that one. I don't own one, but I've used one plenty of times in the past. So it really depends on what you think you're going to be using it for. If you're just in your home studio space, you know, you probably won't be recording drums. So, you know, you might just be miking up guitar amps or miking up an acoustic guitar and everything. So, you know, I recommend SM57 for things like that. You know, it's going to do the job, and they're absolutely brilliant. All right, the next thing that you're absolutely going to need is some cables as well. So the most obvious ones are these ones. So for microphones, so these are called XLR cables. I really like Trick. I think they do absolutely brilliant microphone cables. But you know, once again, there's so many different types. I wouldn't recommend thinking like on this too much or spending a lot of money. You absolutely don't need to. You know, it's not necessarily going to affect the quality of your recording, you know, just spending more on a microphone cable. But Trick are great, and, you know, they're not too expensive as well. You know, you might also want to get something like this as well. So this is essentially a MIDI controller. Well, it's not a MIDI controller, it's essentially a MIDI cable, rather. So this you would plug into your MIDI controller, which I'll talk about very shortly. So something like a keyboard, if you want to record pianos or synths or something like that. So this is made by M Audio. They're not expensive, and you would plug this into the back of your MIDI controller, and it allows you to, you know, record different things in your software as well, which I go into more depth in a video later on in this program. But I'll leave the link to one of them if you wanted to get something like that. And then you might also want to invest, you know, perhaps in some sampling software. So if you are using, for example, something like GarageBand, Logic Pro X, most DAWs, they're going to come with their own softwares for things like synths, and they'll come with things like, piano sounds and stuff like that. So you don't necessarily need to do this. But if you wanted, some very specific things, if you wanted kind of like a drum sampler or something like that, then you might want to invest in something like Toontrack's Easy Drummer, which I personally use and I think is brilliant. Logic and GarageBand do come with their own software called Drummer, so that is absolutely brilliant, and it might mean that you don't feel like you need to invest in the extra stuff. And if you don't feel like you need to, then absolutely don't, because there's really like no need. But it might be the case like later down the road you might want to invest in something like Easy Drummer. You can spend so much on sample packs and things like that. But a couple of ones that I use is Easy Drummer. I use Easy Bass sometimes as well, and also I also use the Giant Piano by Native Instruments, which is a really good piano sampler. And finally, one last thing you might want to get is a MIDI controller, which I previously just mentioned. This could be something like a keyboard. So I have a Korg SP170, which is a weighted keyboard piano type thing, but it's also something that I use to record my MIDI instruments as well. But you can get something that's much cheaper than that, and something that's smaller as well if you just need something basic just to record some synth parts or stuff like that. Then I'll leave once again some examples below, but that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you're going to need. So you don't need to spend a lot of money, and once again you can start off with something really basic.